Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Professor Jordan's Whys of History, where we'll come up with a tagline one day, we promise. In this episode, we'll be looking at something that is directly affecting you every second this video is playing. I'll be putting my pronunciation skills to the test and look at why, statistically speaking, there are more people across the world who understand the words that I'm saying now as compared to shinsai, or actualmente, or aba, or alan. So before I rant about English in English, let's hit our randomly relevant random word for this episode, access. I chose this word because of language's extremely vital role in allowing and preventing one from accessing all manner of things. Language acts as a gatekeeper for countless different cultures, jobs, societies, families, histories, ideas, traditions, and institutions, all of which have varying levels of importance from person to person. That was weird. I think English perfectly exemplifies the way that language brings access, not just in a business or cultural sense, but in terms of a practical and ideological one. Whether English is your only language or your fourth language, the world that English opens up is really without equal and unparalleled in human history. The issue here, of course, is whether or not that world is worth accessing and what one might lose or have lost to get there. So instead of jumping right into the answer, I'm going to rant about English and discuss the role it plays in today's world. Then in part 2, we're going to look at how in Pete's name, to use a popular English idiom, it got this way, and then I'll do the whole overarching thought-provoking stuff there at the end. The word English itself comes from a Germanic tribe that originated in northern Germany and parts of the Netherlands and Denmark, known as the Angles. The Angles, being the trendsetters that they were, found life in Germany boring, so they hopped on a bunch of boats and landed on a rather large island in northern Europe, straight up kicking it with the local Celts who lived there, eventually giving the area its name, Anglesland, or what you probably better know as England. This makes Angle-ish, or English, a heartily Germanic language, along with languages like Dutch, Norwegian, one other big Germanic language I can't remember. However, English has done a lot in its history to try and pretend that it's not Germanic at all. Though the English like to boast of their inability to be conquered by Frenchmen like Napoleon or Germans like Hitler, it's worth noting that at one point England was successfully invaded by the Normans of France, other Germanic tribes like the Saxons and the Jutes, and Vikings, which made English very much a mongrel language as it mixed and stole from the people it came in contact with. In fact, while stealing words and concepts is in no way unique to English, English is so impure that only roughly 1/4 of English words are even rooted in Germanic languages, which makes English both very adaptable and quite large. The Oxford English Dictionary has roughly 250,000 words, compared to your average French or Spanish dictionary, which has around half that number. This complexity makes English fairly difficult to learn, as our spelling makes absolutely no sense. Our vowels seemingly follow no rules at all, and we have a language that often buckles under the weight of all the grammar, spelling, and words it's stolen from other places. In our randomly relevant fact for today, we attempt to justify my long-standing issues with spelling by noting that spelling in English is probably the worst thing about the bloody language. Like, why in the word worse do we use an O when both an E or a U could probably make that sound better? And then we get to the word bloody, which 2 O's together make an oo sound, but not in bloody where it makes an sound, and I'm pretty sure that's the only word that does that. And why is it when you put lan and gauge together, you get language? As an example, the combination of letters O-U-G-H can be pronounced roughly 10 distinct ways, as in enough versus though versus cough versus thought versus etc. etc. In fact, spelling is so stupidly complicated in English, we actually turned it into a freaking competition. A competition where part of the strategy is to ask the language of origin of the word you have to spell. Spelling and grammar in English just never overcame the fact that English is essentially a three-way linguistic split between French, Latin, and German, with a smattering of languages like Greek and Arabic piled on top for good measure, all built loosely on a Germanic grammar system. The moral of the story is, it's not my fault I can't spell worth a damn, blame English. Though, at least we managed to buck that whole masculine-feminine thing, thank the gods. My spelling rant aside, English is what is known as a lingua franca, or the language people from many different places learn to communicate with one another, primarily as a means of conducting business or politics. As an example, due to the influence of the Romans and the Catholic Church, educated people, political figures, and religious leaders throughout Europe would use Latin to communicate for over 1,200 years after the collapse of the Roman Empire. Many famous European Renaissance writers and artists, such as Bach, Machiavelli, Erasmus, and more, wrote their famous works in Latin, despite the fact that Bach was German, Machiavelli Italian, Erasmus Dutch, and More English. The use of Latin was especially prevalent in science. The most famous works of internet space picture meme heroes like Copernicus, Kepler, Galileo, Bacon, and Newton were all written in Latin. In fact, Newton's works weren't even translated into English, his native language, until over 50 years after they were written. Swahili is a great non-Eurocentric example of a lingua franca, as African and Arab traders across much of East Africa learned that particular language in order to carry out trade for hundreds of years. And today, the language has 3 times as many people who learn it as a secondary language than people who have it as a first language. The benefit to a lingua franca is everyone only has to learn one secondary language, Latin in Europe's case or Swahili in East Africa's, in order to bridge most language barriers, which helps in a place where many distinct languages can be found in close proximity. Writing in Latin instead of English allowed Newton's works to reach a much wider audience across Europe, whereas writing in English would have just limited the work's reach to Britain. Bringing us to the modern day, not only is English considered the language of business and politics, it's widely regarded as the first global lingua franca in history. It is for this reason that one can pretty easily get around most major cities in the world only knowing English. And there are more people who speak English as a second language than there are people who are native English speakers by a pretty sizable margin. Over 50% of people in the European Union say they can speak conversational English, despite the fact that only 13% of EU citizens are from an English-speaking country. It is estimated that 1/4 of the world's population can communicate in English to one degree or another. English articles account for 45% of Wikipedia's traffic. English is the international language of aviation and maritime navigation. Countries in the United Nations are listed alphabetically by their name in English, and English is overwhelmingly the language of science and research. So how, to use another English expression and make a pun, in the world did it get this way? And what will likely quickly become a running theme when looking at historical whys, one of the big reasons the world is this way is because of empires. And as we end part 1, I'll leave you with our Geography Jamboree. One, two, three. When in doubt, blame imperialism. A source of a lot of problems we got today. When in doubt, blame imperialism. A key part of how the world got this way. Turns out when you conquer a place, then exploit their resources for decades, this ain't exactly a recipe for development and stability. It's not like schools and railroads are useful to help a country grow. It's all about making the bucks here. Who cares about infrastructure? When in doubt, blame imperialism. It's not like Spanish got there on its own. When in doubt, blame imperialism. Do what we want or we'll blow up your homes. It turns out when you redraw boundaries and invent entire countries, the people there might not be thrilled now. We're surprised when blood is spilled. It's the job of white guys to go out and civilize. This maybe could have used some thought. Oh well, the Maxim gun they have not. When in doubt, blame imperialism. Spread a culture, then took off with all your stuff. When in doubt, blame imperialism. We had our fun and now you've got it rough. When in doubt, Blame imperialism. Took over half the world for bragging rights. When in doubt, blame imperialism. And now we're gone, I'm sure you'll all do fine. You'll all do fine. You'll all do fine. Thanks for watching. Well, you're gonna have to make a concerted effort to reach both ways here.
I did the beast with two backs with your mom. You gotta it takes two to tango. You were not dancing.
Okay, you know what?
All right.